Happy anniversary, Simone. Since you've failed to give this family a legacy, I'm setting my son free. My mother-in-law's voice cut through the smooth R&B playing softly in the background as she slid a Tiffany blue box across the mahogany banquet table. Inside wasn't a diamond tennis bracelet or pearl earrings. It was a stack of divorce papers, already signed by my husband. I looked at Marcus, silently begging him to defend me, to tell his mother she'd crossed a line. But he just stared at his Ferragamo loafers like they held the secrets of the universe. Then the library doors burst open. A 23-year-old woman waddled in, one hand on her swollen belly, the other clutching a designer purse I knew Marcus couldn't afford. "Meet the future of the King family," Vivian declared, gesturing dramatically like she was revealing a prize on a game show. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I picked up the Montblanc pen sitting on the table and signed those papers with a hand that didn't shake once. That's when my best friend Kennedy stepped forward, pulling a thick black envelope from her Birkin bag. "Here's my gift to you, Vivian," Kennedy said, her voice cool as winter in Chicago. When Vivian read the eviction notice inside, every drop of color drained from her face. She had exactly 60 minutes to get out of my house. My name is Simone. And at 32 years old, I've learned that silence isn't weakness. It's the sharpest weapon you can carry. For 7 years, I played the role society expected. The quiet wife, the grateful one, the girl from the South Side who married up and should have been thankful every single day. To Chicago's elite social circles, I was Marcus's charity case. The woman who got lucky when she caught the eye of a king. They thought I spent my days clipping coupons and running a small online wellness business to make ends meet. What they didn't know was that my laptop wasn't open to Facebook or Instagram. It was open to the NASDAQ, the S&P 500 global commodities markets. They didn't know that the struggling logistics company Marcus claimed to run only stayed afloat because of anonymous capital injections from a shell corporation I controlled. And they certainly didn't know that the marble floors they were standing on tonight belonged to me. The night of our 7th anniversary started with humidity so thick it made my silk dress stick to my skin. I'd driven myself to the Gold Coast estate because Marcus texted saying he had to handle a crisis at the warehouse. I knew the crisis was probably another woman, but I played along. That was the game. I pulled up to the limestone mansion in my modest Honda Accord, the car I'd kept deliberately. Can't let them know you're sitting on 8 figures in liquid assets when they think you're barely scraping by. The heavy oak doors swung open before I could even knock. My mother-in-law, Vivian, stood there in head-to-toe Chanel, blocking the entrance like a bougie security guard. "You're late, Simone," she snapped, checking her diamond-encrusted Cartier. "The caterers have questions about the shrimp tower, and the orchid arrangements in the foyer are wilting. Go around to the service entrance and handle it." I smoothed my dress. It was custom-made, raw silk with no visible branding. To Vivian, if it didn't scream Gucci or Prada, it was bargain bin trash. "Hello to you too, Vivian," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I'm not staff. I'm the guest of honor. This is my anniversary party." Vivian laughed, a sound like nails on a chalkboard. "Guest of honor? Girl, please. You're here because my son has a soft heart. Now go around back. Brittany is handling the real guests at the front entrance. We need someone appropriate to greet the congressman's wife." I glanced past her shoulder. Brittany, Marcus's sister-in-law, stood in the grand foyer with a champagne flute, looking like she belonged in a Stepford Wives remake. She was the wife of Marcus's younger brother, Devin. Blonde, trust fund baby, never worked a day in her life. She spotted me and waved, her smile dripping with fake sweetness. "Hey, Simone," she called out. "You might want to check the kitchen. I think something's burning. Maybe it's your cheap weave?" Vivian smirked. "Go on, Simone. Make yourself useful for once. Since you can't contribute to this family biologically, at least contribute your labor." I took a breath. For a second, I thought about turning around, getting in my car, and never looking back. But the plan was already in motion. Kennedy was on her way. The documents were ready. The trap was set. "I'll check on the catering," I said, stepping back. "But Vivian, enjoy the view of this foyer. Might be the last time you see it from this angle." She waved her hand like she was swatting a mosquito. "Stop talking in riddles and move, girl." I walked around the side of the house, my heels clicking on the stone pathway. The estate was massive, 12,000 square feet of historic architecture, sitting on 5 acres of prime Chicago real estate. It had been in the King family for 3 generations, but what Vivian refused to acknowledge was that they'd lost it for years ago. Her late husband had gambled it away, literally. Bad investments, worse poker games, and a taste for expensive mistresses. The bank foreclosed quietly, trying to avoid scandal. That's when Simone Holdings LLC stepped in. I bought the deed from Chase for 30 cents on the dollar, letting them stay under a lease they thought was managed by some faceless investment firm. They had no idea. Their landlord was walking through the service entrance in a dress they called cheap. I pushed through the kitchen doors. The catering staff was in controlled chaos. The head caterer, Mrs. Washington, who I'd hired personally and paid double the going rate, looked relieved to see me. "Mrs. King," she said, rushing over. "Your mother-in-law is trying to cut the lobster bisque to save money. She wants me to tell guests we ran out." I pulled out my black American Express card. "Serve the lobster. If she complains, tell her the bill's settled. I want tonight perfect, Mrs." Washington looked at the card, then at me. "You're too good to them, Mrs. King. They treat you like—" "I know," I interrupted gently. "But tonight's about closure, Mrs. Washington. Feed them well. I don't want anyone hungry when they get the news." I spent the next hour managing details, fixing floral arrangements Vivian had criticized, making sure the champagne was properly chilled, ensuring the shrimp tower didn't collapse. From the kitchen doorway, I watched guests arrive. Chicago's black elite. Doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs, politicians. They air-kissed Vivian and Brittany, complimenting them on the beautiful home. Vivian beamed, accepting credit for food I paid for and a house I owned. Finally, Marcus arrived through the side entrance, looking flustered. His tie was crooked, and he smelled like cheap vanilla perfume. "Definitely not my perfume, Marcus," I said, stepping out of the shadows. "Happy anniversary." He jumped. "Simone, what are you doing back here? You should be out front. People are asking where you are." "Your mother told me to use the service entrance," I said, reaching up to fix his tie. "She said I wasn't presentable enough for the front door." Marcus sighed, pulling away from my touch. "Look," she stressed. "You know how much this party means for the company image. We need investors. You could try harder to fit in. Maybe wear something with a little more pizzazz. That dress looks like a pillowcase." "It's raw silk, Marcus. It cost $4,000. He rolled his eyes. "Right, like you have for $1,000. Just come out in 10 minutes. I need to schmooze the investors first." He didn't kiss me, didn't hand me a gift, didn't even look me in the eye. He just turned and walked into the ballroom, flashing that charming CEO smile he used on everyone but me. I stood there in the kitchen, listening to the party's hum. This was the man I'd loved for 7 years, the man I'd saved from bankruptcy 3 times without him knowing, the man I'd protected from his own stupidity. I realized then that I didn't feel love anymore. I didn't even feel hate. I felt nothing but cold. Surgical clarity. It was time to cut the dead weight. I checked my phone. Kennedy had texted, "Outside. It's time." I walked out of the kitchen and into the ballroom. The chatter dimmed slightly as I entered, not because they were happy to see me, but because I was walking with purpose. That didn't fit their narrative of meek little Simone. I walked straight to the head table, where Vivian and Brittany sat like queens holding court. Marcus saw me and frowned, gesturing with his head for me to sit in the corner. I ignored him. I stood right next to the podium. Vivian glared at me. "What are you doing? Sit down." "No," I said loudly. "You wanted me out front, Vivian. Here I am." She narrowed her eyes, then smiled. That cruel, predatory smile. "Fine, since you're so eager for attention, let's get this started." She tapped her champagne flute with a spoon. The room fell silent. Vivian stepped up to the microphone. "Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us to celebrate 7 years of my son's marriage." Polite applause. Marcus stood beside her, looking nervous. "Marriage is about legacy," Vivian continued, her voice hardening. "It's about building a future. It's about bloodlines. And unfortunately, some branches of a family tree are dead ends." I saw Brittany snickering behind her hand. Guests shifted uncomfortably, sensing the tension. "My son deserves a legacy," Vivian said. "He deserves a son to carry on his name. And since his current wife has proven herself incapable of that simple task, we've had to make some difficult decisions." She reached under the table and pulled out the Tiffany blue box. She walked over and dropped it in front of me. It landed with a heavy thud. "Here's your anniversary gift, Simone. Open it." I opened the box. Inside, nestled in white velvet, was a stack of divorce papers Marcus had already signed. I looked at him. He refused to meet my eyes. I'm sorry, Simone, he mumbled to the floor. But the company needs an heir. Mom says this is for the best. Mom says, I repeated, my voice flat. You're 35 years old, Marcus. Does Mom still tie your shoes too? How dare you? Vivian shouted into the mic. You ungrateful leech. You've lived off our wealth for 7 years. You've given us nothing. No children, no connections, no class. We're cutting you loose, and we've already found your replacement. She gestured dramatically toward the library doors. Come in, sweetheart. The doors opened. A young woman waddled in, heavily pregnant, wearing a tight white dress. I recognized her from Instagram. Crystal, an influencer who posted thirst traps and rented Lamborghinis. She looked about 6 months pregnant. Everyone, meet Crystal, Vivian announced triumphantly. She's carrying the next CEO of King Logistics. She's young, she's fertile, and she knows her place. A collective gasp went through the room, even for Vivian. This was low. Crystal walked up to Marcus and looped her arm through his. She looked at me with a mixture of pity and smugness. Sorry, boo, she said, smacking her gum. But Marcus needs a real woman, not a dried-up has-been. I looked at the three of them. Vivian gloating. Marcus hiding behind his mother. Crystal, smug in her ignorance. They thought they'd destroyed me. They thought I'd cry, scream, or beg. Instead, I picked up the pen Vivian had left on the podium. You're right, Vivian, I said, my voice amplified by the speakers. This marriage is a dead end. I signed the divorce papers with a flourish. The ink was dark and permanent. Done, I said, closing the folder. Vivian blinked, surprised by my calm. Well, good. Now you can leave. Security will escort you out. You can come back for your cheap clothes tomorrow. Not so fast, I said. The heavy front doors of the mansion boomed open. Kennedy walked in wearing a crimson power suit that cost more than Crystal's entire wardrobe. She carried a leather briefcase and a thick black envelope. Behind her were 2 uniformed sheriff's deputies. Who is this? Vivian demanded. Why are there police in my house? Kennedy walked right past Marcus, who shrank back in fear. She placed the black envelope on the table next to the divorce papers. I'm Simone's attorney, Kennedy said, her voice projecting to the back of the room. We're accepting your gift of divorce. In return, Simone has a gift for you. Vivian laughed nervously. A gift? What could she possibly give me? Food stamps? Read it, Kennedy said, cold and sharp. Vivian ripped open the envelope. She pulled out the documents. I watched her eyes scan the first page, then the second. The smirk fell from her face like a shattered mask. Her hands began to shake. This is fake, she whispered. What is it, Mom? Brittany asked, stepping forward. It's an eviction notice, Kennedy announced to the room. Eviction? Marcus stammered. What are you talking about? This is our house. Incorrect, I said, stepping up to the mic. This house was foreclosed on for years ago. Marcus, you stopped paying the mortgage to fund your gambling trips to Vegas, remember? Marcus turned pale. The bank put it up for auction, I continued. A company called Simone Holdings LLC bought the deed. I let you stay here because I thought maybe, just maybe, you'd treat me with a shred of decency if I saved you from homelessness. I was wrong. Vivian looked up from the papers, her eyes wild. You own this house? You have no money. You run a wellness blog. I'm an angel investor, Vivian. My portfolio includes biotech firms, real estate holdings, and a majority stake in the logistics company that's been subcontracting for Marcus's business to keep it solvent. I don't run a blog. I run an empire. Brittany had pulled out her phone, frantically typing. Mom, she shrieked. I just checked Cook County property records. It's true. The owner is listed as Simone Holdings, and the registered agent is Kennedy Williams. The room erupted in whispers. Guests were looking at me with new eyes. The quiet wife in the corner had just become the most powerful person in the room. This is illegal, Vivian screamed, tearing the eviction notice in half. You tricked us. You can't kick us out. I can, and I am, Kennedy said calmly, signaling the deputies. You're trespassing. The lease agreement had a termination clause for public defamation of the landlord. I'd say what you just did to Simone counts. But where will we go? Marcus asked, his voice trembling. Crystal needs to rest. She's pregnant. Not my problem, I said. You have 60 minutes to pack personal belongings. Anything left becomes property of Simone Holdings. And Marcus? He looked at me, tears forming in his eyes. I'm freezing the company accounts, I said. The funding from my trust is cut off as of this moment. You might want to update your resume, though I doubt anyone will hire a CEO who can't even pay his own mortgage. Crystal pulled her arm away from Marcus. Wait, you're broke? You told me you were a millionaire. I am, Marcus pleaded. Or I was. Baby, please, tell her to stop this. Crystal looked at the deputies, then at me. She did the math instantly. I'm not getting arrested for trespassing, she said. She turned and walked out as fast as her heels would allow, leaving Marcus reaching for empty air. Vivian was hyperventilating, clutching her chest. You're killing me. You're killing an old woman. Save the drama, Vivian, I said. The ambulance isn't covered by my insurance anymore. You have 58 minutes left, I signaled to the deputies. They stepped forward, hands on their belts. Ma'am, the deputy said to Vivian. We can do this the easy way or the hard way, but you need to vacate the premises. Vivian looked at her wealthy friends, begging for help, but they all looked away, sipping drinks, pretending to examine the artwork in their world. Power was the only currency that mattered, and the balance had just shifted violently. I stood on the marble staircase, looking down at the chaos. Brittany was running upstairs to grab her jewelry. Marcus was crying on the sofa. Vivian was screaming at a waiter. Kennedy came up beside me and handed me a glass of champagne. Happy anniversary, Simone, she whispered. I took a sip. It tasted cold, crisp, and expensive. The best one yet, I replied. But the night wasn't over. As Vivian dragged her Louis Vuitton suitcases down the grand staircase, scratching the wood. I knew this was just the first battle. They were down. But people like Vivian and Brittany didn't stay down. They got dirty, and I was ready to get muddy with them. The rain hammered against the windows of the Motel 6 on the outskirts of Chicago. It was a budget chain motel, the kind with cigarette burns on the bedspread and mysterious stains on the carpet. Miles away from the gated community they'd just been expelled from, Vivian sat on the edge of the bed, her hands trembling with rage. Her Chanel suit was wrinkled, her makeup smeared. She looked like a woman who'd aged 10 years into hours. Brittany was pacing the cramped room, her thumb flying across her phone screen. We have to destroy her, Vivian hissed. She humiliated us. She stole our home. She owns the home, Mom, Brittany said, stopping her pacing. Legal says she's bulletproof on the eviction, but there are other ways to hurt her. What do you mean? Marcus asked from the corner where he was nursing a bottle of whiskey he'd managed to smuggle out of the party. Brittany turned her phone around. I just started a TikTok live. I have 15,000 followers. If we tell the story right, we can turn the public against her. We paint her as the villain, the bitter barren wife who seduced the lawyer and stole the family fortune. Can we do that? Devin, Marcus's younger brother, asked nervously. Isn't that defamation? It's only defamation if they can prove we're lying, Brittany said, with a wicked grin. And who's going to believe a woman who kept her millions secret from her own husband? It looks suspicious. We say she was embezzling from your company, Marcus. We say she was abusive. We say whatever we need to say to get the mob on our side. Vivian stood up, her eyes gleaming. Do it. Turn that camera on. I want to tell the world about Simone the Snake. Brittany hit the record button. Hey guys, she said, her voice dropping into a fake, tearful register. I need your help. My family has just been thrown out on the street by a monster. Back at the mansion, I was sitting in the library reviewing security footage on my laptop. I saw the notification pop up on my phone. Brittany was live. I watched as Vivian sobbed on camera, telling lies about how I abused her, how I starved Marcus, how I was sleeping with the sheriff to get the eviction order. The comments were flooding in. People were angry. They were calling for my head. Kennedy looked over my shoulder. They're playing dirty, Simone. This could damage your reputation with the investors. I smiled. Let them talk, Kennedy. Let them dig the hole deeper. I opened a file on my computer labeled Project Glassdoor. Brittany thinks she's exposing me, I said. But she forgot one thing. What's that? Kennedy asked. I know about the charity fund, I said. The $180,000 she siphoned off last year to pay for her boyfriend in Miami. Kennedy's eyes widened. You have proof? I have bank transfers, I said. And I have photos. I dragged a file into an email draft. Vivian wants a war on social media? Fine. But she brought a knife to a gunfight. I hit send. Tomorrow, we're not just evicting them from a house. We're evicting them from society. The screen faded as the upload bar completed. The real war had just begun. Sheriff Patterson stepped into the foyer the next morning, his boots making a heavy thud against the marble floor. He was a tall, broad man, with the kind of presence that commanded respect. I'd known him for 6 years, ever since I donated tactical gear for his precinct through one of my shell corporations. He tipped his hat to me. "Morning, Miss King. I understand we have some unwanted guests refusing to vacate?" Vivian gasped, clutching her pearls. "Sheriff Patterson, you can't be serious. You know who I am. My husband built this community. We've donated to your campaign for decades." "Correction, Vivian," I said, stepping forward. "You donated using company funds that were actually loans secured by my assets. So technically, I donated to his campaign. And Sheriff Patterson knows exactly who signs the checks." The sheriff turned to Vivian, his hand resting casually on his belt. "Ma'am, the leaseholder has terminated your residency effective immediately. You have 45 minutes to gather personal effects. And by personal effects, I mean clothing and toiletries. Anything attached to the house stays." Vivian's face turned purple. "This is robbery. This is my furniture. These are my antiques." She lunged toward a massive painting hanging in the hallway, a 19th century depiction of Lake Michigan. She grabbed the frame, trying to lift it. "Put it down, Vivian," I said, my voice cutting through her hysteria. She whirled around, her nails digging into the canvas frame. "This belonged to Marcus's great-grandfather. It's a family heirloom. You can't take our history." Kennedy stepped beside me, opening a thick binder. "Actually, Vivian, according to the bankruptcy filing from 4 years ago, this painting, along with the rest of the estate's assets, was seized to pay creditors." I pulled a specific sheet and held it up. "Here's the bill of sale. Item number 42, oil painting, lake landscape, purchased at auction by Simone Holdings LLC for $11,000. I bought your history, Vivian, because your son pawned it to pay for his mistress's condo 2 years ago." "Not this mistress. The one before her." I looked at Crystal, who was standing near the door, clutching her stomach. Her eyes went wide. "The one before me?" she whispered. "Marcus, you told me I was the first. You told me you and Simone were basically roommates." Marcus was busy trying to shove his watch collection into a duffel bag. He froze. "Baby, don't listen to her," he stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. "She's just trying to mess with your head." I laughed. It was cold and dark. Mess with her head? "Marcus, I don't need to play mind games. The receipts do the talking." I turned back to Vivian, who was still hugging the painting. "Sheriff, if she attempts to remove that painting, I'm pressing charges for theft of corporate property. It's valued at $45,000 now." "That's a felony." Sheriff Patterson took a step toward Vivian. "Put the art down, Mrs. King. Don't make me arrest you today." Vivian let out a sob and released the frame. She slumped against the wall, sliding down until she was sitting on the floor in her expensive dress. "You're the devil," she hissed at me. "You pretended to be one of us. You pretended to be family. I pretended to be broke." I corrected her, "because I wanted to see if you'd love me without the money. I wanted to see if I was enough, just as Simone. But you proved every single day that unless I was buying your affection or birthing your heirs, I was nothing to you. So now I'm being exactly what you feared, the person signing the checks." Brittany was trying to sneak out the side door carrying a silver tea set wrapped in a tablecloth. "Deputy, stop her," Kennedy barked. The second deputy blocked Brittany's path. She squealed, dropping the silver onto the floor with a loud clang. "It's just spoons," she cried, her face flushing red. "I need them." "You don't need anything from this house, Brittany," I said, walking over. "And certainly not my sterling silver serving set." Brittany glared at me. "You think you've won, don't you? You think because you have money, you're better than us. But you'll always be the outsider, Simone. You never fit in." I smiled. "You're right, Brittany. I never fit in because I wasn't a parasite." "Now empty your pockets." She hesitated. "Empty them," I commanded. "Or the deputy will do it for you." Trembling, Brittany reached into her pockets. She pulled out a diamond tennis bracelet and pearl earrings, my earrings. The ones missing from my jewelry box last Thanksgiving. I snatched them from her hand. "I knew it. I knew you took them. I just borrowed them." She spat. "That's theft, Brittany," Kennedy said. "Make a note. Add it to the file." The clock ticked loudly. 30 minutes left. Crystal was sitting on a bench near the door, breathing heavily. The reality was crashing down. She'd attached herself to Marcus, thinking he was her golden ticket. Now she was watching his empire crumble. "Marcus," she said, her voice trembling. "Where are we going? You said we'd live here. You said your mother ran this house." Marcus zipped up his bag. "We'll go to a hotel, baby. Just for a night or two. I just need to make some calls." "With what money, Marcus?" I asked, leaning against the doorframe. "I canceled your corporate credit cards 10 minutes ago. Your personal accounts are overdrawn." "I know because I stopped covering the overdraft fees this morning." Marcus looked at me with the eyes of a trapped animal. "Simone, please. Don't do this to her. She's pregnant. That's my child. My son." I looked at Crystal's belly, then at Marcus. The secret about his medical history burned in my mind. The file sitting in Kennedy's briefcase. But not yet. That blow was for later. For now, let him believe the lie. "If you're worried about your son, Marcus, maybe you should have thought about that before you served your wife divorce papers at her anniversary party. You wanted a new life. Go pay for it." He grabbed Crystal's arm, roughly pulling her up. "Come on, we're leaving." "Wait," Crystal said, resisting. "My bags, my designer clothes. They're upstairs. You have 5 minutes," I said, checking my watch. "If you're not out by then." The sheriff throws everything on the lawn. And it's starting to rain. Crystal looked out the window, where thunder shook the glass. She let out a wail and ran for the stairs, her heels clicking frantically. Vivian finally pulled herself up from the floor. She looked old suddenly. The air of superiority had evaporated, leaving a frail, bitter woman. "I'll never forgive you for this, Simone," she said, adjusting her wig. "You've destroyed this family." "I didn't destroy it, Vivian," I said. "I just stopped paying for the facade." She grabbed 2 suitcases the deputies had brought down. They were heavy, and she struggled. She looked at Marcus, expecting him to help, but he was too busy arguing with Brittany about who would drive the Range Rover. "Simone, please," Vivian said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Just let me take the car. It's leased in the company name." I looked at the woman who'd made my life hell for 7 years. The woman who mocked my infertility, who called me trash, who tried to replace me like a broken appliance. "The lease is terminated," I said. "The company cars are being repossessed in the morning. If you take it, that's grand theft auto." "The sheriff is standing right here." Sheriff Patterson crossed his arms. "She's right, ma'am. You walk or call a cab, but that vehicle stays." Vivian let out a sound of pure frustration. She dragged her bags toward the door, the wheels screeching against the marble. "Get out," I said. "All of you. Time's up." The deputies began herding them toward the massive front doors. It was a parade of pathetic defeat, Brittany clutching her fake designer purse, muttering curses. Marcus, dragging a duffel bag, his suit soaked with sweat. Crystal, hobbling down the stairs with armfuls of clothes, dropping shoes and scarves. And Vivian, looking back one last time at the chandelier she'd never stand under again. I followed them to the threshold. Rain was coming down in sheets. A torrential Chicago storm that turned the world gray and wet. They stood huddled under the overhang, looking out at the long driveway. "How do we get to the street?" Brittany yelled over the thunder. "It's half a mile. Uber can't get through without a code." "And I'm not giving you the code," I said, leaning against the doorframe, warm and dry. "You have to open the gate," Marcus shouted. "We can't carry these bags that far." "Watch me not care," I replied. I pressed the button that controlled the main doors. They began to close slowly, ominously. "Simone, wait," Marcus screamed, lunging forward. Sheriff Patterson stepped in front of him. "Back up, son. You're trespassing now." The door slammed shut with finality. The sound of the lock engaging was the sweetest music I'd ever heard. I turned to Kennedy and the sheriff. "Thank you, Sheriff. You can go now. I think they get the message." He nodded, touching his hat. "Call if they try to come back, Miss King. My officers will be patrolling tonight." He left through the side door. Kennedy looked at me, grinning. "You're ice cold, Simone. I love it." I walked to the kitchen and grabbed the bottle of wine I'd been saving. Not for an anniversary, but for a victory. I grabbed the glasses and headed for the upstairs balcony. "Come on," I said to Kennedy. "I want to watch." We walked up the grand staircase. The house was silent, and mine. Truly mine. No more whispers about my unworthiness. No more judgment. Just the sound of rain and the smell of freedom. We stepped out onto the master bedroom balcony overlooking the front estate. Rain was pounding the earth, washing away the heat. Down below, illuminated by security floodlights. I saw them. 4 tiny figures struggling down the long driveway. Vivian had abandoned her suitcases halfway and was limping along, using her purse as a shield. Marcus was trying to help Crystal, who'd slipped in the mud, ruining her white dress. Brittany was running ahead, leaving them behind, looking out for herself. They looked small, powerless. I poured the wine, the dark red liquid swirling. I handed one to Kennedy. To clarity, I said, raising my glass. To eviction, Kennedy replied, clinking hers against mine. I took a sip. I watched as they reached the iron gates, shaking the bars, screaming into the intercom. But I'd disabled the buzzer. They were trapped. Outside in the storm, forced to wait on the road for a taxi that might take an hour. Marcus looked back at the house. He must have seen me standing there on the balcony, bathed in warm light, holding wine, dry and secure. He raised his hand as if to wave, or maybe beg. I turned my back. I walked into the bedroom and closed the French doors, shutting out the storm, shutting out the noise, shutting out the past. Is it over? Kennedy asked, sitting on the bed. I looked at the divorce papers on the nightstand. The ink was dry. No, I said, feeling fire in my chest burn hotter. This was just the eviction. Now we take the rest. I picked up my phone. What are you doing? Kennedy asked. I'm calling Devin, I said. It's time to tell him where his wife got the money for her plastic surgery, and after that, I'm releasing the audit of company finances to the IRS. I looked at Kennedy and smiled. If they thought the rain was bad, wait till they see the flood. The morning sun filtered through the oak trees in Millennium Park, casting long shadows on the jogging path. I sat on a wrought iron bench, watching a young father teach his daughter how to ride a bike without training wheels. It was wholesome. Pure sharp contrast to the destruction I was about to unleash. I checked my watch. Devin was late. My brother-in-law had always been the shadow in the King family. Where Marcus was loud and arrogant, Devin was quiet and malleable. He was the one Vivian sent to pick up her dry cleaning, the one who apologized when the waiter got the order wrong. He was weak, and today, I was going to use that weakness to crack the family foundation wide open. I saw him approaching from the north entrance. He looked terrible. His polo shirt was wrinkled, and he was wearing the same boat shoes from the party, now scuffed and muddy. He walked with his head down, shoulders slumped like the humid Chicago air was too much to bear. He stopped a few feet from the bench, refusing to make eye contact. You wanted to see me, Simone, he said, his voice raspy. Sit down, Devin, I said, patting the empty space beside me. I'm not going to bite, unless you give me a reason to. He sat, keeping distance between us. He smelled of stale sweat and McDonald's. The glamour of the King family had evaporated in 48 hours, leaving only this pathetic reality. I heard about the credit cards, I said, keeping my tone conversational. That must have been embarrassing. Devin put his head in his hands. Why are you doing this, Simone? We're family. I never did anything to you. I never insulted you like Mom or Brittany. I just wanted peace. That's the problem, Devin, I said. You wanted peace, so you let them wage war on me. You watched Brittany steal my jewelry. You watched your mother belittle me. You watched your brother cheat. And you said nothing because it was easier. Silence isn't neutral, Devin. Silence is complicit. He sighed, a long shuddering breath. We're broke, Simone. We have nothing. Mom's talking about selling her wedding ring, but she left it in the safe at the mansion. Brittany's losing her mind. She's screaming at everyone. She says she can't live like this. I reached into my structured leather bag. It was the only thing I'd brought. Brittany's screaming because she's terrified, I said. She knows what I know, and she knows once you know it, her free ride is over. I pulled out a manila envelope, thinner than the one I gave Vivian, but far more volatile. What is this? Devin asked, eyeing it warily. This is the financial audit of the King Family Youth Foundation, I said. The charity your mother set up to help underprivileged kids in Chicago. The one Brittany's been managing as treasurer for 3 years. Devin frowned. Brittany does great work with the charity. She's always organizing galas and silent auctions. She works hard. Does she? I asked. Open it, Devin. Look at the withdrawals. He hesitated, then slowly undid the clasp. He pulled out bank statements. I'd highlighted relevant transactions in neon yellow. Page 3, I directed. Look at the transfers to our Alessandro Consulting. $5,000 a month starting 2 years ago. Then $10,000. Then a lump sum of $50,000 last December. Devin squinted at the paper. Who's our Alessandro? We don't have any consultants by that name. Turn the page, I said. He flipped it. I'd stapled a printout from a private investigator's report. A profile page from an elite tennis club in Lincoln Park. The photo showed a handsome, bronze-skinned man with long dark hair and a winning smile, holding a tennis racket. Name, Rafael Alessandro. Occupation, senior tennis pro. Specialties, private lessons, clay court techniques, and personalized coaching. Devin stared at the photo. His hands began to tremble. This is Brittany's tennis coach, he whispered. She takes lessons 3 times a week. She says it helps her stress. I leaned closer, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. It helps her stress. All right. She's funneled $230,000 of charity money directly into his personal account. And those consulting fees? They cover rent on an apartment in Wicker Park. An apartment where Brittany spends every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon. No, Devin said, shaking his head violently. No, Brittany loves me. She's high maintenance, yes, but she's loyal. She wouldn't steal. She wouldn't cheat. I pulled out the final piece of evidence. A series of photos taken by my investigator. Brittany and Raphael eating dinner at a romantic bistro, holding hands across the table. Brittany kissing Raphael in a parking garage. And the timestamp on the photos, 3 days before my anniversary party. She bought him a Porsche, Devin, I said mercilessly. With money meant for after-school programs for Southside kids. She bought her lover a car while your family was losing everything. Devin dropped the photos on the bench. He looked like he might vomit. The denial was draining out of him, replaced by dark, hollow realization. He remembered the late nights, the mysterious errands, the way she guarded her phone like it contained nuclear codes. She told me the money was gone, he whispered. She told me the charity was bankrupt because of the economy. She blamed recession. She blamed everyone but herself, just like she blamed me for the eviction, I said. She's a parasite, Devin, and she's sucked you dry. He stood abruptly, clutching the envelope. The paper crumpled under his grip. His face had changed. The weakness was gone, replaced by raw, ugly rage. I have to go, he said. Where are you going? I asked, though I already knew. I'm going to ask my wife about her backhand. He spat. He marched away, stomping down the path toward the parking lot. He didn't look back. He didn't say goodbye. He was a man on a mission, a missile I'd just armed and pointed directly at the Motel 6. I watched him go, feeling a strange mixture of pity and satisfaction. I picked up my coffee cup and took a sip. It was cold, but it tasted like victory. The atmosphere in the motel room was thick enough to choke on. The air conditioner had finally died, leaving the room sweltering. Vivian was lying on the bed with a wet washcloth over her eyes, moaning about migraines. Marcus was sitting on the floor, trying to call old business contacts on a burner phone, getting sent to voicemail every time. Crystal was eating a bag of Flamin' hot Cheetos, complaining loudly about the sodium content. Brittany was in the bathroom, applying fresh lipstick in the cracked mirror. She was humming to herself, trying to maintain the delusion that this was temporary, that she was still the queen bee. The door flew open with a crash that made Vivian scream. Devin stood in the doorway. He was soaking wet from sweat and rage. He looked wild. Andre, Brittany called out, peering from the bathroom. Did you bring food? I told you I wanted that kale salad from Whole Foods, not garbage from the gas station. Devin walked into the room. He didn't say a word. He walked straight to the bathroom, grabbed Brittany by the arm, and dragged her out into the main room. Hey, Brittany shrieked, struggling against his grip. You're hurting me. Let go. Have you lost your mind? Devin threw her toward the bed. She stumbled and fell onto the mattress next to Vivian, who scrambled backward in terror. Devin, what is the meaning of this? Vivian demanded, sitting up. You're assaulting your wife. My wife. Devin laughed, a sound devoid of any humor. My wife is a thief, Mom. My wife is a liar. He threw the envelope at Brittany. Papers exploded into the air, raining down on the bed like confetti. Photos of Raphael drifted down, landing face up on the floral comforter. Bank statements fluttered to the floor. What is this? Marcus asked, picking up a photo. Who's the guy with the racket? Brittany went pale. She scrambled to cover the photos, trying to hide the evidence. Where did you get this? She screamed, her voice shrill. You've been spying on me, you creep. I got it from Simone, Devin shouted. She knows, Brittany. She knows everything. She knows about the 230,000 you stole from the charity. Vivian froze. She looked at the bank statements scattered on the bed. She grabbed one, her eyes scanning the numbers. 230,000. Vivian whispered. You told me the account was empty. You told me we couldn't pay property taxes because donations were down. I invested it, Brittany stammered, backing toward the window. It was a business deal. Raphael is a financial advisor. He manages sports portfolios. He teaches tennis. Devin roared. He teaches tennis and sleeps with married women in apartments paid for by my mother's foundation. He lunged at her. Marcus jumped up, trying to restrain his brother, but Devin was fueled by adrenaline of pure betrayal. He shoved Marcus aside like a rag doll. You stole from us, Devin screamed, getting in Brittany's face. We're living in a motel because we have no cash reserves, and you bought him a Porsche. It wasn't a Porsche, Brittany yelled, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. It was a used BMW, and I deserved it. I put up with you and your crazy mother for 5 years. I deserved a little happiness. Slap. The sound was loud and crisp, like a whip crack. Vivian gasped. Crystal stopped eating her Cheetos. Mouth open, Devin had struck her. It wasn't gentlemanlike, but they were no longer living in a gentleman's world. They were in the mud now. I want a divorce, Devin said, his voice shaking. And I'm going to the police. I'm going to tell them everything. You're going to jail, Brittany. Brittany held her cheek, eyes wide with shock. Then the shock turned to fury. She was cornered, a rat in a trap. And rats bite. You want to go to the police? She hissed, lowering her hand. You want to talk about crimes? Go ahead, Devin. Call them. But don't think I'm going down alone. What are you talking about? Vivian asked, her voice trembling. Brittany turned her venomous gaze on Marcus, who was still on the floor, nursing his bruised shoulder. You think your precious older brother is innocent? You think Marcus is the victim here? Brittany laughed maniacally. Why do you think Simone took the company? Why do you think she owns everything? Because she tricked him? No, Mom, Brittany said, stepping over Marcus. Because she had to save him. She had to bail him out. And do you know why? Shut up, Brittany, Marcus warned, his face turning gray. Don't say it. I'll say it, Brittany screamed. She looked at Devin, then at Vivian. You want to know where the rest of the money went? Ask Marcus about the tax returns from 2020. Ask him about the shell companies in the Cayman Islands. Ask him about the $2.8 million in unreported income he used to pay off gambling debts in Macau. The room went dead silent. The only sound was the dripping of a leaky faucet in the bathroom. Tax fraud, Devin whispered. Massive tax fraud, Brittany said, triumphant in her destruction. Federal level, prison time level. Simone paid the fines quietly to keep him out of jail last year. That's how she got the controlling shares. She bought his freedom. Vivian looked at her golden boy, her firstborn. Marcus, is this true? She asked. Did you lie to the IRS? Marcus put his head between his knees and began to sob. I thought I could win it back. I thought I could fix it before anyone noticed. You idiot, Vivian screamed, hitting him with her pillow. You ruined us. It doesn't matter, Brittany yelled over them. If Devin calls the cops on me, I'll hand over the hard drives I copied from Marcus's laptop. I have the ledgers. I have the emails. If I go down, the whole King family goes down. Marcus goes to federal prison for 10 years. Is that what you want, Devin? Devin stood there, paralyzed. He looked at his wife, who'd stolen their future. He looked at his brother, who'd stolen their legacy. He looked at his mother, who'd enabled it all. This family is a disease, he whispered. He turned and walked to the door. Where are you going? Vivian cried. You can't leave us. I'm going to get some air, Devin said. Before I kill all of you. He slammed the door so hard the plaster around the frame cracked. Inside the room, the silence returned, heavy and suffocating. Brittany sat on the bed, smoothing her skirt, her face a mask of defiance. Marcus wept on the floor. Vivian stared at the wall, her mind unable to process the magnitude of betrayal. They were eating each other alive. Just as I'd predicted, the money was gone. The trust was gone. And now the secrets were bleeding out like a severed artery. Back in my mansion, I watched rain droplets dry on the patio stones. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Devin. Just a photo, a picture of the bank statements and Raphael's profile scattered on the motel bed. Underneath, he'd typed 2 words, you won. I deleted the message. I didn't want to win. I wanted justice, and justice was just warming up. The security gate buzzer sounded at 2 in the afternoon, shattering my Sunday peace. I was sitting in the sunroom, reviewing architectural plans for renovations I'd been dreaming about for 5 years. I checked the camera feed on my tablet. It was Marcus. He looked nothing like the arrogant man who'd handed me divorce papers 48 hours ago. He was wearing a tracksuit from his gym bag, likely the only clean clothes he had left. He was pacing in front of the iron gates, looking over his shoulder like he expected paparazzi or police to jump from the bushes. I pressed the intercom button. "You're trespassing, Marcus," I said into the microphone. "State your business, or I call the sheriff again." "Simone, please," he pleaded, looking up at the camera. "I need to talk to you. Alone. Without lawyers. Without my mother. Just us. Please, baby. It's an emergency." I considered leaving him there, but curiosity is dangerous. And I knew I had one final card to play, one I'd kept hidden in the deepest part of my safe for 5 years. I buzzed the pedestrian gate open. "You have 10 minutes, I said. He walked up the long driveway. I met him on the front porch. I didn't invite him inside. I stood with my arms crossed, wearing a cashmere wrap, enjoying the cool breeze, while he sweated in humidity. He stopped at the bottom of the steps. He looked at me with a mixture of fear and longing. "You look beautiful, Simone," he said, trying to summon his old charm. It fell flat. "Skip the flattery, Marcus," I said. "Why are you here? Did the motel run out of ice?" He flinched. "Simone, I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. I should never have listened to my mother. She got in my head. She kept talking about legacy, about the king name dying out. You know how she is." "I do know how she is," I replied. "I also know you're a grown man who signed divorce papers and brought a pregnant mistress to our anniversary party. That's not your mother, Marcus. That's you." He climbed to steps, falling to his knees. He actually knelt on the dirty welcome mat, reaching for my hand. I pulled back. "It was Crystal," he said, his voice cracking. "She trapped me, Simone. It was one night. I was drunk. I was stressed about the business. It meant nothing. She means nothing. She's carrying your child, Marcus," I reminded him. "The heir. The future of the dynasty. Remember?" He looked down at his hands. "That's the only reason she's here. I don't love her. I love you. I want you back, Simone. We can fix this. We can raise the boy together. You always wanted a child. We can adopt him. We can pay Crystal to go away after the birth. We'll have the son we always wanted. And we'll have the money." I stared at him in disbelief. The audacity was breathtaking. He wanted me to take him back, pay off his mistress, and raise his illegitimate child, all while he continued living in my house on my dime. "You want me to raise Crystal's baby?" I asked slowly. "He's my son," Marcus insisted, looking up with tears. "He's a king. He has my blood. That's what matters, right? The bloodline. I had to do it, Simone. You couldn't give me a son." I tried to be patient. I tried to accept it. But a man has needs. A man needs to leave something behind. I felt cold calm wash over me. This was it. The moment I'd protected him from for half a decade. The truth I'd swallowed every time his mother called me barren. Every time she recommended fertility tea. Every time she looked at my stomach with disgust. "Wait here," I said. I walked into the house, leaving him kneeling on the porch. I went to the library and opened the wall safe behind the painting. I bypassed stacks of bonds and property deeds. I reached for the thin blue file folder at the very back. I walked back out to the porch. Marcus was still on his knees, looking hopeful. He thought he'd won. He thought I'd gone to get a checkbook. "Stand up, Marcus," I said. He stood, dusting off his knees. "Did you find a way to help us?" I handed him the blue folder. "Do you remember 5 years ago?" I asked. "We went to the specialist in River North, Dr. Kimura. We were trying to conceive." Marcus frowned, confused by the change in subject. "Yeah, I remember. He said we had unexplained infertility. He said it was stress. He said we should keep trying." "That's what I told you," he said, I corrected. "Because I found you crying in the parking lot afterward. You were so fragile, Marcus. Your ego was so brittle that I knew the truth would break you. So I lied. I took the burden. I let your mother call me broken for 5 years to protect your manhood." "What are you talking about?" Marcus asked, opening the folder. His hands were shaking. "Read the highlighted page, Marcus. Dr. Kimura's final report." He stared at the paper. I watched his eyes scan the medical terminology. Diagnosis: primary hypogonadism caused by Klinefelter syndrome, karyotype 47, XE. What is this? He whispered. I don't understand. It's a genetic condition, Marcus, I explained, my voice steady and clinical. You were born with an extra X chromosome. It affects development. And it has one very specific side effect. I pointed to the line at the bottom of the page, azoospermia, complete absence of sperm and ejaculate. What does that mean? He asked, looking at me with panic rising. It means 0 sperm count, Marcus. It means you're sterile. You've always been sterile. You will always be sterile. It's physically impossible for you to father a child naturally. He shook his head violently, stepping back. No, that's a lie. This is fake. You forged this like Brittany said. Look at the signature, I said. Look at the date. Look at the lab results attached. That's your DNA profile, Marcus. I paid Dr. Kimura extra to seal the file and never speak of it. I told him I'd break the news to you when you were ready. But you were never ready. You were too busy blaming me. He dropped the folder. Papers scattered across the porch, caught by the wind. I'm a man, he shouted, his voice cracking. I function. I perform. Functioning is not the same as fertility, I said. You can perform all you want, Marcus, but you're shooting blanks. You've never impregnated anyone. Not me, not your college girlfriends, and certainly not a 23-year-old influencer you met at a club for months ago. The realization hit him like a physical blow. His knees buckled. He grabbed the porch railing to steady himself. His face went gray. The narrative he'd built his entire life around the King legacy, the bloodline, the need for an heir, it was all fantasy. He was the end of the line. But Crystal, he whispered, she's pregnant. I saw the ultrasound. It's a boy. I'm sure she's pregnant, I said, leaning against the doorframe. She looks very pregnant. And I'm sure it's a boy. But if you have 0 sperm, Marcus, and she's having a baby, then we're left with a very interesting mathematical problem. I took a step closer, invading his personal space, forcing him to look at me. If you can't make a baby, Marcus, then whose baby is inside Crystal? He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly. The betrayal was washing over him. He'd destroyed his marriage, humiliated his wife, and lost his fortune for a child that didn't belong to him. She lied to me, he gasped. She told me I was the only one. She's a gold digger, Marcus, I said. Just like you. She saw a man in a Range Rover with a black Amex and thought she hit the jackpot. She probably needed a scapegoat for a mistake she made with someone else. You were the perfect mark. Arrogant, desperate for a son, and rich. Or so she thought. No, he wailed. No. He turned and ran down the steps, stumbling on the gravel. He scrambled to pick up the medical papers, clutching them to his chest. I have to ask her, he screamed. I have to know. He ran down the driveway, his tracksuit flapping in the wind. He looked like a man possessed. He was running back to the motel, back to the woman who'd played him even better than he'd played me. I watched him go. I felt a twinge of pity, but it was fleeting. He'd made his choice. He'd chosen the lie over the truth. He'd chosen fantasy over reality. I picked up the blue folder from the porch floor. Goodbye, Marcus, I whispered. I went back inside and locked the door. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself iced tea. My hand was steady. The house was quiet, but it wasn't empty. It was full of truth, and for the first time in 7 years, the air felt clean. I checked my phone. It would take Marcus about 20 minutes to get back to the Motel 6 if he ran the whole way. I called Kennedy. Get the popcorn, I said. Why? She asked. Because Marcus just found out he's not the father, I said. And he's headed back to the motel to confront Crystal. Oh, my God, Kennedy said. Did you tell him? I gave him the medical file, I said. The one from Dr. Kimura. You're brutal, Simone. I learned from the best, I said. His mother taught me everything I know about destroying a person's spirit. I just applied it to facts. Do you think he'll hurt her? Kennedy asked, her voice turning serious. Marcus is a coward, I said. He won't hurt her physically, but he's going to tear that motel room apart looking for truth. And when he finds it, the police will be called. I want to be ready. Ready for what? Kennedy asked. Ready for the fallout, I continued. Because once Vivian finds out there's no heir, she's going to have a stroke. And once Brittany finds out there's no baby to anchor them to King money, She's going to flip on everyone. I paused, taking a sip of tea. The implosion is happening, Kennedy. I just lit the fuse. I hung up. I walked to the window and looked out at the driveway. Rain had started again, a light drizzle misting the glass. I thought about the baby, the innocent child caught in this mess. I hoped Crystal was smart enough to leave. I hoped she had a backup plan, because the King family didn't forgive. And they certainly didn't nurture. That child, whoever the father was, had dodged a bullet. He'd never grow up under Vivian's thumb. He'd never try to please a father who saw him as property rather than human. In a way, I'd save that baby too. I sat down in the living room and waited. I knew the phone would ring soon. I knew screams were echoing through thin motel walls right now, and for the first time in my life, I was perfectly content to sit and wait for the echo. The door to room 104 shattered inward like it had been hit by a battering ram. Marcus didn't use a key card. He used his shoulder, fueled by a cocktail of humiliation and adrenaline that had turned his blood to gasoline. He stood in the doorway, chest heaving, water dripping from his tracksuit onto cheap carpet. In his hand, he clutched the blue medical folder like a weapon. Crystal was sitting on the bed, painting her toenails bright coral. She looked up, annoyed. "Where have you been?" she asked, blowing on wet nails. "I told you I wanted Chipotle. Did you bring food?" Marcus didn't answer. He crossed the small room into strides. He grabbed a handful of Crystal's weave and yanked her head back. "Hey," she screamed, dropping the nail polish bottle. It shattered on the floor, spilling pink lacquer everywhere. "Get off me. You're crazy." "Who is he?" Marcus roared, his voice cracking. "Who's the father?" Vivian was sitting in the corner chair, trying to repair a tear in her stocking. She jumped up. "Marcus, stop it. You're hurting the baby. You're hurting the heir." "There is no heir, Mom," Marcus shouted, not letting go of Crystal's hair. "There is no king, baby. Look at this." He threw the medical file at his mother. Papers fluttered to the floor, landing next to broken nail polish. Vivian stared at the highlighted diagnosis: primary hypogonadism, sterile. Crystal's eyes darted around the room, looking for an exit. But Marcus was blocking the only door. "What are you talking about?" she stammered, trying to pry his fingers off her hair. "Of course it's yours. You're the only one I've been with, liar." Marcus screamed. He shook her violently. "Simone showed me the file. I've been sterile since birth, Crystal. I have 0 sperm. I can't make a baby. So tell me who's growing inside you right now before I throw you through that window." Crystal stopped struggling. Her face went slack. The mask of adoring girlfriend dropped instantly, revealing the cold calculator underneath. She saw the medical papers on the floor. She saw the look in Marcus's eyes. The jig was up. "Let go of me," she said, her voice losing its high pitch and dropping to a street-tough rasp. "Marcus, let go." Pushing her back onto the bed. "Tell me." Crystal rubbed her scalp, adjusting her wig. She looked at Marcus with pure disgust. "You really thought you were special, didn't you?" she scoffed. "Walking into the club with bottle service and your leased Range Rover. You looked like an easy mark, Marcus. And you were. Who is the father?" Marcus whispered, his hands shaking. "Does it matter?" she asked, reaching for her cigarettes. "It's Darius," Vivian gasped, hand flying to her throat. "Darius? Who is Darius? Is he a doctor? A lawyer?" Crystal laughed harsh, barking. "He's a personal trainer, Mama V." "Well, he was. Right now, he's sitting in Cook County Jail for possession with intent. He needed money for a lawyer. I needed money for the baby. And then here comes Marcus talking about needing a son to save his company. It was like winning the lottery." "You played me," Marcus said, tears streaming down his face mixed with sweat. "You let me destroy my marriage. You let me throw Simone out. You destroyed your own marriage," Crystal snapped. "I just gave you the excuse you were looking for. You were so desperate to prove you were a man, you didn't even question it. You didn't even ask for a paternity test. That's on you." Vivian was on her knees now, scrambling to pick up medical papers. Her hands trembled so badly she could barely hold them. She read the lines over and over. "Azoospermia. Genetic defect. It's not true," she whispered. "My son is perfect. The Kings are strong. We have strong blood. Simone forged this. She's lying to hurt us." "It's real, Mom," Marcus said, his voice hollow. "I remember the doctor. I remember the tests. Simone hid it from me. She hid it to protect me. And you? You treated her like garbage. You called her a dry tree. You told everyone she was the problem. He looked at his mother with hatred that had been simmering for 35 years. It was me, Mom. It was always me. I'm the one who can't give you a legacy. I'm the one who's broken. Vivian stood up, swaying on her feet. Her face had gone ashen gray. Her lips were trembling. No, she wheezed. No, it can't be. I promised your father. I promised him the name would live on. She looked at Crystal's belly, then at Marcus, then at the papers in her hand. The reality crashed into her delusional world like a meteor. There was no grandson. There was no dynasty. Her son wasn't a king. He was a sterile failure who'd been conned by a jailbird's girlfriend, and Simone, the woman she'd tormented for 7 years, had known. Zora had covered for him. Simone had paid the bills. Simone had been the only thing holding their pathetic lives together, and Vivian had thrown her away. The room seemed to spin. Vivian clutched her left arm. A sound like a rusty hinge escaped her throat. Mom, Marcus said, stepping toward her. Vivian's eyes rolled back. She collapsed, hitting the floor with a heavy thud that shook the cheap furniture. Mom? Marcus screamed, dropping to his knees beside her. He shook her shoulders. Her skin was clammy and cold. Her breath came in shallow, ragged gasps. Call 911, he yelled at Crystal. Call them now. Crystal sat on the bed, checking her nails. My phone's dead, she said flatly. And I'm not using my minutes for her. She called me trash yesterday. Give me the phone, Marcus roared, lunging at her and snatching the device from her hand. He dialed with shaking fingers. My mother, he shouted into the receiver. She's having a heart attack. Motel 6. Room 104. Hurry. The emergency room at Cook County Hospital was a war zone of fluorescent lights and beeping machines. It was the hospital for the indigent, the uninsured, the desperate, a far cry from the private concierge clinics Vivian was used to. Marcus sat in a plastic chair in the waiting room, his head in his hands. He was still wearing his wet tracksuit. He looked like a homeless man. Brittany was nowhere to be found. After Devin left, she'd packed a bag and vanished, probably to find another man to leech off. Crystal had stayed at the motel, claiming she needed rest for the baby that wasn't his. A doctor in scrubs approached. Looking tired. Family of Vivian King? He asked. That's me, Marcus said, standing up. Is she okay? She's stable for now, the doctor said. It was a myocardial infarction, a massive heart attack brought on by acute stress. We managed to stabilize her, but she has significant blockage. She needs catheterization, likely a stent, possibly bypass surgery. Do it, Marcus said. Do whatever she needs. The doctor hesitated. He looked at the clipboard in his hand. Mr. King, we ran her insurance information. The policy on file Blue Cross Gold came back as terminated. Effective yesterday. Marcus felt the floor drop out from under him. Simone. She'd canceled the health insurance. It was a company policy paid for by business accounts, the accounts she'd frozen. There must be a mistake, Marcus lied. Just do the surgery. I'll pay for it. We need a payment method on file before we can proceed with non-emergency surgery, the doctor said, his voice cooling. Or reinstatement of the policy. The estimated cost for the procedure and ICU stay is upwards of $60,000. Without insurance, we need a down payment of $15,000 tonight. $15,000? Marcus whispered. He checked his pockets. He had $40 in cash and a wallet full of declined credit cards. Can you bill me? He asked. The doctor shook his head. Not for this procedure. And honestly, Mr. King, looking at your mother's credit report, which we pulled for financial aid application, her credit is frozen. There are flags everywhere. We can't extend credit. Marcus looked through the glass doors of the ICU. He could see his mother lying in bed, hooked up to tubes and wires. She looked small, fragile. For the first time, he realized she was just an old woman who'd built a castle out of playing cards, and he'd helped her knock it down. I have to make a call, he said. He walked out to the ambulance. They were the air was thick with exhaust fumes. He pulled out his phone. Battery at 4%. He scrolled to the contact he'd been dreading. Simone. She was the only one. She had the money. She had the power. She was the only person who could save his mother. He pressed call. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Please pick up, he begged. The night air. Please, Simone. I know she was awful, but she's dying. I was in the kitchen making a grilled cheese sandwich when my phone buzzed on the counter. I glanced at the screen. Marcus. I let it ring. I took a bite of my sandwich. The sharp cheddar melted perfectly with the sourdough. It was simple, comforting. The taste of peace. It rang again. And again. Kennedy looked up from her book in the living room. You're not going to answer that? No, I said. It might be an emergency, Kennedy said. It's definitely an emergency, I agreed. He knows about the sterility. He knows about the baby. And knowing Vivian, she probably collapsed from shock. So you're just going to let it ring? I walked over to the phone. I looked at the picture. It was a photo of Marcus and me from our honeymoon in Turks and Caicos. We looked so happy, so young. I remembered taking that photo. I remembered thinking I was the luckiest woman in the world. I remembered Vivian calling the day after we got back, telling me I looked fat in my swimsuit photos. I remembered Marcus laughing, telling me to have a sense of humor. I remembered the fertility treatments, the injections, the hormones that made me sick. Vivian telling me God was punishing me for my sins. Marcus refusing to go to appointments because he was busy playing golf. I remembered the anniversary party, the divorce papers, the pregnant mistress paraded in front of my friends. I picked up the phone. I didn't slide the green button. I slid the red one. Then I tapped the screen 3 times. Block caller. I put the phone back on the counter, face down. I'm not their savior anymore. Kennedy, I said, picking up my sandwich. I resigned from that position effective yesterday. If they have an emergency, they can call Crystal. Or maybe Brittany can sell that BMW. Kennedy watched me for a moment, then nodded slowly. Cold, she said. Justice, I corrected. I finished my sandwich. It was delicious. Back at the hospital, Marcus stared at his phone screen. The call had been declined. He tried again. The number you have reached is not accepting calls at this time. She'd blocked him. He sank down onto the curb, putting his head between his knees. The concrete was wet and cold. Mr. King. The doctor called from the automatic doors. We need a decision. Do we prep for surgery or transfer her to the county facility? The county queue is about 3 days long. Marcus looked up. He had no money. He had no wife. He had no son. And now he was about to lose his mother because he couldn't pay the toll. Transfer her, he whispered. The doctor nodded and walked away. Marcus sat alone in the dark, listening to sirens wail in the distance, realizing that for the first time in his life, no one was coming to save him. The air in the boardroom of King Logistics smelled of stale coffee and desperation. It was 9 in the morning on Monday, but Marcus looked like he'd been awake for a week. He sat at the head of the long mahogany table, wearing a suit that was clearly one of the few he'd salvaged from the eviction. It hung loosely on his frame. He'd lost weight. Stress and fear were potent diet plans. Around the table sat the remaining board members, 3 old men who'd been friends with Marcus's father. They looked tired, skeptical, and sitting in the corner was Devin. He hadn't shaved. He stared at the table, refusing to look at his brother. We just need a bridge loan, Marcus said, his voice cracking. He pointed to a graph on the projection screen showing a line plummeting toward 0. This is a temporary setback. The negative press from recent family issues has spooked vendors, but the fundamentals are strong. The King legacy is strong, Mr. Henderson, the board member with the thickest glasses, cleared his throat. Marcus, with all due respect, the fundamentals are non-existent. We've reviewed the audit report that was anonymously sent to us yesterday. The tax liability alone is enough to bankrupt us. And there are allegations of embezzlement regarding charity funds. That's Brittany, Marcus said quickly, throwing his sister-in-law under the bus without hesitation. That wasn't company money. That was the foundation. It's separate. It's all connected, Jamal, Mr. Henderson said. The reputation of this family is toxic right now. No bank in Chicago will touch us. We called 5 lenders this morning. They all laughed. We don't need banks, Marcus insisted. He was sweating now, wiping his forehead with a handkerchief. We have Z and investments. They've been our silent partner for 5 years. They've covered every shortfall. They believe in the vision. Devin looked up. Then he made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. You really don't get it, do you, Marcus? Get what? Marcus snapped. Zianda has always come through, Marcus continued. I sent an emergency request to their legal representative on Sunday. They're coming today. They're going to restructure the debt. You'll see. The intercom on the table buzzed. Mr. King. The receptionist's voice trembled. The representatives from Z and Investments are here. See? Marcus said, smoothing his tie, a frantic smile plastering onto his face. I told you. They're here to save us. Send them in. He stood up, buttoning his jacket, trying to look like the CEO he pretended to be. He looked at the board members with renewed confidence. This is how business is done, gentlemen. You build relationships. You find partners who trust you. The heavy double doors of the boardroom swung open. The room went silent. Marcus's smile faltered. Then it dropped completely. His mouth hung open. I walked into the room wearing a white power suit tailored to perfection. My hair was pulled back in a severe, elegant bun. I carried nothing but a thin leather folder. Kennedy walked beside me, carrying the heavy briefcase. Marcus blinked. He looked behind me, expecting someone else. A banker, a man in a suit. Anyone but me. Simone? He asked, his voice confused. What are you doing here? This is a closed meeting. You're not allowed in this building. Security, sit down, Marcus, Kennedy said, her voice projecting across the room. Marcus bristled. You don't tell me what to do. This is my company. Get out, both of you. I'm waiting for important investors. We are the investors, Marcus, I said, calm and quiet. He stared at me. He looked at Kennedy. He looked at the board members who were watching, with wide eyes. What are you talking about? He whispered. I walked to the other end of the table, opposite him. I placed my folder on the mahogany surface. Z and Investments, I said. Simone and Associates. Did you never wonder why the silent partner never asked for a meeting? Did you never wonder why they bailed you out every time you gambled away payroll? No. Marcus shook his head, backing away until his legs hit his chair. No, that's impossible. You run a wellness blog. You're a housewife. I'm the majority creditor of King Logistics, I said. For 5 years, I've been buying your debt. Every time you needed cash, I bought a bond. Every time you missed a payment, I bought a promissory note. I own your trucks, Marcus. I own your warehouses. I own the chair you're sitting in. I looked at the board members. Gentlemen, my name is Simone King. I'm the managing director of Z and Investments. Mr. Henderson stood up, extending his hand. He looked shocked, but he knew where power lay. Miss King, he said. We had no idea. Marcus collapsed into his chair. He looked like he was having a stroke. He wheezed. You were paying for everything. I was protecting my investment, I said. And I was protecting my husband. I thought if I kept the company afloat, you'd eventually grow up. I thought you'd become the man you pretended to be. But you just took the money and spent it on women and cards. Devin started laughing again. Manic. Broken. She owns us, he cackled. She owns us all. Mom called her trash and she owns the roof over our heads. It's perfect. Marcus slammed his hand on the table. This is fraud. You deceived me. You can't do this. It's not fraud, Marcus, Kennedy interjected. It's business. And according to loan agreements, you signed without even reading because you were too busy planning trips to Vegas. You're in default. She opened her briefcase and began passing out documents to the board members. As of this morning, King Logistics has failed to meet its debt obligations for 3 consecutive quarters, Kennedy explained. Under the terms of the agreement, Zion Investments is exercising its right to convert debt into equity. Convert? Marcus asked. What does that mean? I looked him dead in the eye. It means I'm not just your creditor anymore, Marcus. I'm swapping the money you owe me for stock in the company. I looked at the board. Gentlemen, if you look at page 5, you'll see the calculations. Based on current valuation of the company, which is effectively zero thanks to the tax fraud scandal and the amount of debt I hold, this conversion gives Z and Investments a 68% ownership stake in King Logistics. Mr. Henderson did the math quickly. He nodded. The numbers are correct. She holds the majority. That means, I said, leaning forward, my hands on the table, that as of this moment, I'm the chairman of the board. And I'm calling this meeting to order. Marcus stood up, his face purple. You can't take my company. My father built this. It's my name on the building. It's your name, I agreed. But it's my money. And right now, your name is a liability. I opened my folder. I took out a single sheet of paper. We have a lot of work to do to save this company, I said, addressing the board. We need to settle with the IRS. We need to rebrand. We need to cut the cancer out of the organization. I looked at Marcus. The first item on the agenda is a personnel matter. Marcus was breathing hard, panting like a cornered dog. He looked around the room, looking for an ally. Devin, help me, he begged. Tell them I'm the CEO. Devin looked at his brother. He looked at the man who'd let his wife steal from charity. The man who'd destroyed their family for a lie. You're fired. Marcus, Devin said quietly. Marcus flinched as if struck. For the official record, I said, my voice ringing with finality, I'm terminating CEO Marcus King for gross incompetence, financial fraud, and moral turpitude. Effective immediately. Marcus lunged toward me. You witch. I'll kill you. Two uniformed security guards stepped from the shadows at the back of the room. I'd hired them that morning. They were bigger than the deputies from the eviction. Security, I said, not flinching. Show him out. The guards grabbed Marcus by the arms. He struggled, kicking and screaming like a toddler. This is mine. He screamed as they dragged him toward the door. You're all traitors. They hauled him out into the hallway. We could hear his screams echoing to the elevator. I'm the king, he shouted. I'm the king. Then the elevator doors dinged and there was silence. I smoothed the front of my white suit. I looked at the board members. They were staring at me with a mixture of fear and respect. Now, I said, sitting down at the head of the table in the chair still warm from Marcus's body. Let's discuss the audit. Devin, you might want to call your lawyer. We're going to need him when the police arrive for Brittany. Devin nodded numbly. Thank you, Simone, he whispered. I didn't say he was welcome. I just opened the file and went to work. The cleanup had begun. 3 months later, the seasons in Chicago had shifted. Autumn had arrived, painting the trees in shades of amber and crimson. I stood in what used to be Vivian's formal parlor. She'd filled this room with heavy brocade drapes, dark mahogany furniture, and the suffocating scent of old lavender. Now it was the sunroom. I'd ripped down the drapes, letting sunlight flood through floor to ceiling windows. The dark wood was gone, replaced by cream-colored Italian leather and accents of gold and teal. The carpet that smelled of dust and judgment had been torn up, revealing original white oak floors refinished to a high-gloss honey sheen. The walls no longer held portraits of dead king ancestors who looked down with disdain. Instead, they displayed modern art, bold, abstract pieces in vibrant colors I'd selected from galleries in Paris and New York. It was no longer a museum of oppression. It was a sanctuary of power. I reached for the porcelain cup on the marble coffee table, taking a sip of tea. It was quiet, peaceful, intentional silence. My eyes drifted to the magazine on the table. The latest issue of Forbes. The cover featured a woman in a white power suit, arms crossed, looking directly at the camera with eyes that had seen fire and survived. It was me. The headline read, The Phoenix of Chicago, Simone King and the Rise of Z and Investments. I ran my fingers over the glossy paper. A year ago, Vivian had told the world. I ran a wellness blog. She'd told her friends I was a leech. Now the business world knew the truth. Investments had posted record profits. We'd acquired 3 failing logistics firms and turned them around, saving 1,800 jobs. We were launching a biotech incubator next month. I wasn't just a player in the Chicago market. I was the market. My phone buzzed. A text from Kennedy. Ready for tonight? The gala starts at 7. Everyone wants to meet the woman of the year. I smiled. Typed back. Born ready. See you there. But before the gala, I had one more appointment. The most important appointment of my life. The security intercom chimed a soft melodic sound. I checked the monitor. A sedan was waiting at the gate. It was Mrs. Chen from the adoption agency. I pressed the button to open the gate. My heart did what it had never done during a business deal. It fluttered. It raced. I walked to the front door, smoothing my dress. I caught my reflection in the new foyer mirror. I looked different than the woman who'd stood here a year ago watching her in-laws flee in the rain. My shoulders were back. My skin was glowing. I looked like a woman who owned her destiny. Mrs. Chen walked up the steps carrying a car seat. Inside was a bundle of pink blankets and a pair of wide, curious brown eyes. Maya. She was 6 months old. She'd been placed in foster care 2 days after birth, abandoned by a mother who couldn't care for her. When I saw her file 3 months ago, I knew. I just knew this was the child I was meant to have. Not a biological legacy to satisfy a man's ego, but a soul that needed love. Good afternoon, Miss King. Mrs. Chen said, smiling. She's ready to come home. I reached out and took the carrier. The weight of it felt right. Perfect. Come in, I said. Welcome home, Maya. We sat in the sunroom. Mrs. Chen laid out the final paperwork on the marble table next to the Forbes magazine. It was stark contrast. One document represented professional conquest. The other represented personal victory. Vivian had called me a dry tree. She'd said I was useless because I couldn't give Marcus a son. She'd used my infertility as a weapon to bludgeon my self-worth. I looked at Maya, who was reaching for my finger with her tiny hand. Vivian was wrong. Family wasn't about bloodlines or DNA or carrying on a last name for a man who didn't respect you. Family was choice. It was promise. I picked up the pen. I signed my name on the final decree of adoption. Simone King. Mother. It's official, Mrs. Chen said, stamping the document. Congratulations, Miss King. She's yours. I picked Maya up out of the seat, holding her against my chest. She smelled of baby powder and hope. You're safe here, I whispered to her. You'll never be judged here. You'll never be told you're not enough. You'll grow up strong and free, Mrs. Chen left an hour later, leaving me alone with my daughter. The nanny I'd hired, a wonderful woman named Elena, was upstairs preparing the nursery. I'd take Maya up soon, but for now, I just wanted to hold her. I wanted to soak in the reality that I'd built a family on my own terms. The sun began to set, casting long golden shadows across the room. It was time to get ready for the gala. But there was one last thing I needed to do. One final ritual to close the book on the past. I walked over to the fireplace, a massive gas insert framed by white stone. I turned the key and flames flickered to life, dancing blue and orange. I reached into the drawer of the side table. I pulled out a photograph. It was the wedding photo. The one that used to hang above the mantel in a heavy gold frame. It showed Marcus and me on that beach in Turks and Caicos. He was smiling, that charming smile that hid 1,000 lies. I was looking at him with adoration, the look of a woman who didn't know she was sleeping with the enemy. I'd kept it not out of sentimentality, but as a reminder. A reminder of the girl I used to be. The girl who made herself small so a man could feel big. The girl who tolerated disrespect because she thought it was the price of love. I looked at Marcus's face. I tried to feel anger. I tried to feel sadness. But there was nothing. Just dull recognition, like looking at a stranger in an old yearbook. He was gone. He was a number in a federal prison system. He was a memory, fading faster every day. I didn't hate him anymore. I'd outgrown him. I tossed the photo into the fire. It landed face up on the logs. For a second, Marcus's smile seemed to waver in the heat. Then the edges curled. The paper blackened. Flames licked over his face, consuming the lie. Goodbye, I whispered. I watched until it was nothing but ash. Then I turned off the gas. The room was silent again. The air felt lighter, as if the last ghost had finally been exorcised from the walls. I went upstairs to the nursery. Elena was rocking Maya to sleep. She's an angel, Miss King, Elena whispered. I kissed Maya's forehead. I have to go out for a few hours. Watch over her. She's the most valuable thing in this house. I went to my dressing room. I put on a gown of deep emerald green velvet. I put on diamond earrings I'd bought for myself to replace the ones Brittany had stolen. I looked in the mirror. I didn't see a victim. I didn't see a Dvorki. I saw Simone. The doorbell rang, a deep, confident sound. I walked down the stairs. I opened the heavy oak door. Julian stood there. He was tall, with shoulders that filled out his tuxedo jacket and eyes that were intelligent and kind. We'd met 6 months ago during a negotiation for a commercial real estate deal. He was a structural architect who owned his own firm in the Loop. He hadn't been intimidated by my reputation. He'd been intrigued. He looked me up and down, his appreciation evident but respectful. Simone, he said, you look stunning. Thank you, Julian, I said, stepping onto the porch. You clean up nicely yourself. He offered me his arm. Are you ready for your big night? The car is waiting. I looked back at the house. The windows were glowing with warm light. My daughter was sleeping safely upstairs. My business was thriving. My enemies were vanquished. I took his arm. His grip was firm and steady. It felt like partnership, not possession. I'm ready, I said. We walked down the steps toward the waiting limousine. The night air was cool and smelled of autumn leaves. The stars were bright above Chicago. I didn't look back at the mansion. I didn't look back at the ashes in the fireplace. I looked forward. At the open door of the car. At the man smiling at me. At the city waiting to applaud my name. The past was a lesson. The present was a victory. And the future was entirely mine. Epilogue Essex. Months later, I received a letter forwarded through my attorney. It was from Vivian. She was living in a subsidized senior apartment in Englewood. The rent was covered by Medicaid. She had no car, no jewelry, no legacy. The letter was written in shaky handwriting. Dear Simone, I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness. I know what I did was unforgivable. I called you names. I treated you like you were less than human. I threw you away. But I am an old woman now, and I am alone. Marcus is in prison. Devin won't speak to me. Brittany is serving her sentence. I know you have a daughter now. I heard through the grapevine. I know you are happy. I am writing to say that I was wrong about you. You were never the problem. You were the solution. You were the strength holding us together, and I was too blind and too proud to see it. I don't expect you to help me. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that you were right, and I was wrong, and I'm sorry. Viviane read the letter twice, then I walked to the fireplace. I turned on the gas. I dropped the letter into the flames. I watched it burn. Some apologies come too late. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. I turned off the gas and walked upstairs to check on Maya. She was sleeping peacefully. Clutching a stuffed elephant, I kissed her forehead. You'll never know her, I whispered. You'll never know what it feels like to be judged. Because I'm going to raise you in love, not legacy. I turned off the light and closed the door. Downstairs, Julian was waiting in the living room, reading the Wall Street Journal. Everything okay? He asked, looking up. Everything's perfect, I said, sitting beside him. He put his arm around me. It felt warm, safe, equal. I love you. Simone, he said. I love you too, I replied, and I meant it, because this time, love wasn't built on lies, desperation, or legacy. It was built on respect, truth, and choice. The most profound lesson from my journey is that silence should never be mistaken for weakness. It's often strategy in motion. True power doesn't scream, it plans. I proved that a woman's worth is never defined by her ability to bear children or the validation of a toxic family, but by her resilience, intelligence, and the empire she builds with her own hands. When you're underestimated, don't argue. Outgrow them. Ultimately, we learn that family isn't defined by bloodlines or legacy, but by love, respect, and the conscious choice to protect one another. If my ultimate checkmate satisfied your soul, remember this. The best revenge isn't destruction, it's building a life so beautiful, they can only watch from the outside.